Let's talk some tech. Caroline Woods looking at Adobe. Disruptor or disrupted, Caroline? Have we come to a conclusion on that for Adobe yet?
Well, if you take a look at the one-year chart, I think you could say disrupted. Shares are down about 22% over the past 1 year, although only down about 1.4% year to date. So technically outperforming the broader market, all about perspective. But Jay Woods of Freedom Capital Markets in his latest note pointed out that yep, I saw him on. So he pointed out that Adobe has traded lower after earnings in the past, or in 5 of the past 6 reports. So we'll see if they can buck the trend when they report tonight. There seems to be some optimism today. Shares are up about 1%. The Photoshop maker is expected to report adjusted EPS of $4.97 on revenue of $5.65 billion. That would be 9% year-over-year growth. When it reported back in the fourth quarter, Adobe said it expected first quarter revenue to be between $5.63 and $5.68 billion. So just to kind of put that into perspective, that was disappointing at the time, but analysts have obviously adjusted their targets a bit. In terms of the digital media segment, the largest segment for Adobe, revenue is expected to be up 9.6% to $4.18 billion. Document Cloud up 14% to $855.5 million. And then in the digital experience business, that's expected to be up 8.5% at $1.4 billion in revenue. And then the subscription for digital experience expected to be up almost 11% to $1.29 billion. So investors, of course, in addition to that, will be looking for any impact of AI monetization. That's really what we look for when kind of combing through Adobe's reports. Could see that in monthly active user growth. In the fourth quarter, monthly active users grew by 25% year over year to about 650 million users in the quarter. That's both paid and free users. So we'll be looking for continued growth in terms of monthly active users. Now for the current quarter, analysts are looking for 9% year over year revenue growth to $5.79 billion with EPS around $4.97. And then for the full year fiscal 2025, Adobe has already said when it last reported that it expects fiscal 2025 revenue to be between $23.3 and $23.6 billion. That was actually seen as disappointing when it reported fourth quarter results, but let's see if there are any updates to the 2025 outlook, especially seeing as different industries, but we've been seeing obviously some guidance adjustments in the past week. As I said, shares are up today ahead of the report, but overall it's been a pretty tough run for Adobe. And while investors are sort of downbeat on Adobe, I will say the analyst community is still pretty bullish. If you take a look, 70% of analysts still rate Adobe as a buy. The median price target, I've seen a few price target cuts heading into the report, but the median price target $600 a share, which implies almost 40% upside, about 37% upside from current levels. So bullishness on the street, but not necessarily from investors, except for maybe today.
Okay. Well, Adobe is trying to find some range of trading at like 440. So you kind of remove the January low, and it's been fairly stable compared to the super gaps down from the last 2 earnings. But obviously that means earnings are a flight risk, basically, for the market. So I think at this point, though, they've probably priced in to a good degree the way this business was affected in a negative way, because they're using AI in some pretty cool, innovative ways for sure within their platforms. And I think eventually that's, you're going to find a buyer, a steady buyer for that. And maybe you could charge them more, but they are going to lose some along the way that are on the more casual side of use.
I think competition is always kind of a key headwind when you talk about Adobe, not just on the creative side, but obviously on the PDF side. I mean, there's so many divisions where you can really talk about competitors in the space, whether it be DocuSign, Microsoft, Salesforce. There's Canva. There's so many different competitors. I think the bulls, though, don't see the competitors really taking market share away and continue to expect AI monetization. So we'll have to see what they say. I think they reported that pretty rare revenue miss in December and have been able to really recover from that big fall. So one might say the bar is low heading into this report, but we'll have to see.
Okay. Adobe is a volatile one indeed, so it should be a fun report and should give us some sense of how they've adapted, obviously, and who's who's buying the new products and how much they're upselling them for. I'm not sure if they are at this point. I think for some, but it depends on platform and stuff. So I mean, it's pretty cool. I've seen videos of what you can do. We've joked before as journalists, like I wouldn't have even had to design my newspaper in college. Like I would have just plugged it in, InDesign, just gonna spit it out now. I would spend hours, painstaking hours, trying to fit everything within the lines, Caroline.
Well, meanwhile, I found the one kid in our class that was good at Photoshop to create my news graphics for me when I was doing shows for the local news station.
There you go. You could have AI'd his job away.
Yeah,
you wouldn't even have had to interact with him. You could have just said,
it's true.
Buzz off.
It's true. Although you could also, we've talked about some of the competitors like Midjourney, things like that. So yeah. I guess it just depends on what program you're using.
And you're paying for a lot of those too, to be clear. It's just, I think people they want to try that stuff out. And I don't know how far they're going to get with it also. I think there's a sort of like hot new thing element on the creative side. If you think about the type of memes that have become popular, the type of like videos and stuff, some of it's creative, some of it's silly, some of it's just interesting because it's the first time you've seen it. Like think about when like Will Smith was like eating pizza, the pasta, the AI, like the first couple like Trump Putin memes were like funny, but I don't know how many people are going to go over there and they're going to go, you know what, this has limited use. Maybe I need the full suite of what I can do with Adobe.
Well, they're probably using it for more than just memes. But when I see those things, I think it's a bit scary because I think that, some of them you can easily tell are AI, but others you can't. And it's getting pretty good. So the technology is getting pretty impressive, which, it's a bit scary. But let's see what Adobe has to say in terms of those monthly active users.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate that, Caroline Woods. Let's trade it. CEO of Prosper Trading Academy, Scott Bauer. I think, Scott, or is it your AI? Is it you, Scott?
No, that's the real me. That's the real me.
I know the view, yeah. All right, that's him. What do you think? Has the market fully priced in the number of departures from Adobe's products that maybe you're trying out this other AI-driven stuff?
I don't think it's fully priced it in, and I think this is going to be a really big question mark. And when I look technically at this stock, Oliver, we're sitting literally right on the 50-day moving average. So we're going to get a move. We are definitely going to get a move, and the market's pricing in roughly about a 10% or so move either way. I think long run, this stock, I love those analysts that have that $600 price target. I just don't know that on this report, just given all of the overhang in the marketplace right now, even if we get a nice big beat, I'm not sure that we get that huge upside. So I am looking for this to remain somewhat range bound after this report and taking advantage of that, excessive option premium going into the print here. So I am looking at that 10% move either way here. I'm looking at technicals downside around 400, upside around 485, and selling an iron condor makes perfect sense to me. So what I'm doing is I'm selling this week's 405, 395 put spread on the downside. I'm selling the 480, 490 call spread on the upside. I can collect about $4. That's a hefty premium here. So this is a, move that I'm looking for either direction, but to stay somewhat within that expected move here. And by the end of the day on Friday this week, anywhere between 401 and 484, I make money. Outside of that, that's my danger zone, but I am completely limited in my risk because I'm using spreads on both sides.
All right. So I think that kind of fits the narrative of the product we're talking about, which is if the market hasn't prices in it at this point, then they're probably really deteriorating, in which case you could see another gap down like in the previous two. But also given those two gap downs, if there's any sign that, maybe this is not as big of an exodus, I could see it ripping too. I could see people trying to find a hero in a down market, and that might come from a stock that's already been down a lot already.
It absolutely could. And actually with this position, if I had to say that I was a little bit more concerned about one side or the other, it would be that upside. But I just think, again, that with the overhang of this market here, to get a complete blowout where this thing goes, above 500, I think is going to be very difficult. I like my odds here with the premium that I'm collecting.
Okay. And $4, you know, as long as you don't have like a, you know, a huge event. Here's the thing, Adobe also is kind of firm today and kind of looking pretty good, you know, up more than the market. So how will that kind of change the price at which you get in if this thing does continue to rally?
You know, we're right here at 440-ish, right? And so I'm looking at that basic 10% move either way, not giving it a bias, which is why I'm really targeting, you know, 400, 485 or so. If we get a big move later in the day, maybe I'll go and adjust my strikes depending on where that move is. But, you know, we can only make a trade based on what we know right at the moment, right? So this is what I see. This is what I like. Maybe I make an adjustment later, but I'll let this thing run, and we'll look at it tomorrow and see what the move is like.
Got it. Okay. All right. So the upper end of this, remind me if we throw it up one more time real quick.
484 is my break even at the end of the day on Friday.
Okay.
So, you know, that's a pretty decent resistance point here. I think it's going to have trouble breaking through that even on a good report.
Okay, all right. So that's interesting. I mean, the range is pretty wide there, actually. So
right, I've got about 10%, right in line with what that expected move is.
Got it. Okay. All right. Hey, Scott. Before I let you go, the social team will cut our Adobe conversation here. Give me a market thought. This thing like can't hold a bid. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's the overhang to the market because I think people are anticipating, okay, at some point, whether it's an hour from now, at the end of the day, whatever it might be, there's going to be more tariff news that's going to disrupt the marketplace. But that's part of trading. That's what we have to take into consideration. And right now, we are in this zone, if you will, of sell any rip instead of buying any dip. That could change, but right now, that's the overhanging narrative.
Okay. Scott Bauer, great stuff. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the thoughts there, and appreciate the trade. Looking for Adobe to hang in the implied range.